He had this thing about him that he wanted to be an overachiever.
A man after God's own heart.
But David was willing to go against the challenge and go against the giants.
In the beginning, how God found him, he had sent Samuel to go to David's house, right? To look for him. But Samuel didn't know who he was going to be looking for. So to his human eyes, Samuel was looking for strength. He was looking for bigger physically, right? Because back then there was a lot of war, there's a lot of conflicts, and people needed that. So that's what he looked for. But the way God chose him, the way he seeked him, it was through the interior, right? His character. And it's crazy how it is, because when you are a shepherd, there comes dangerous animals trying to kill the sheep. And how David handled all that situation, all he had was a slingshot, but he was very accustomed, or he was already used to using it. And the way he did, other than bravery, other than the strength or whatever he had to prove, he had this thing about him that he wanted to be an overachiever. He wanted to do more than what was asked of him.
The classic underdog story in 1 Samuel is David and Goliath. Now you've heard this underdog story. Everyone has. It's the little guy versus the big guy. And he wins, right? But the true essence and what makes David so significant is his faith. A man after God's own heart, right? But you have to question. David picks up 5 stones. Now, that's questionable, right? If David truly had the faith, truly had faith, right? A man after God's own heart. He would only need 1 stone to defeat Goliath. He would only need 1. Why would he pick up 5 stones? Did he question his faith? Was Goliath that big of a threat? It couldn't be, because he didn't even want armor. But 5 stones, that is what we need to ask. Why 5?
One thing that's interesting about the giants, they always came to defy the Israelites. The Philistines came cursing, and one of the things that Goliath said was, "Give me one of your best soldiers." So it was always through intimidation, through the armor they wore, the words they would say, the group of giants that would approach them, always trying to intimidate the Israelites. The challenge was given, and no one wanted to step up. So an important thing about David is that he, no matter the level of hardness or how hard it looked, how difficult it seemed, but David was willing to go against the challenge and to take up the challenge and go against the giants. And I would think that the Israelites being challenged would carry a fear within them. I could even say that maybe David had a bit of fear within him, knowing that he was going to go up against someone that was 3, 4, who knows how many times the size of him. And the fear didn't overcome David.
Well, the crazy thing is, later on, if you continue reading, Goliath had brothers, or there was more giants out there. So in David's mind says, I'm gonna use 1 rock for each one of them. And later on it shows, after he used that one, later on he had other battles, and he confronted the other four giants. Of course, he didn't use those rocks to beat them with, but that symbolized he was prepared to do more than what was asked of him. To do more, not for other people. He didn't do it for other people. He didn't do it to please other people. He knew what he had as in a character, as in his own character, what he could offer. was to do the best. And that's what we have to do. That's what we have to take, is to do everything better for God, to do everything more than what is asked of us. Many people nowadays, they just do the bare minimum. But what we have to do is to get God's attention, is to do more than that, to do more than what was asked of us. And that's why I believe David was, not that he was an overachiever, but he did it naturally. He has a heart after God. I believe he says it in, Samuel says it first, and then later on it says it again. But to be known as a person that has a heart that follows God, right? That's something that you can't look over it, right? You can't look over that. That's something that gets people's attention, something that is not commonly thrown out there. So if you do more than what is asked of you, you'll be able to get recognized, not only by the people around you, by your classmates, by your co-workers and stuff like that, but by the only thing that matters is God, that He recognizes you. He's gonna recognize you, and what is there more to ask for?
So whenever fear comes, it's about what we do with it. Do we let it take us over? Do we let the fear bring us down? And that was key for David, that no matter what emotion or what feeling he felt, the fear he had, he overcame that, and he went forward with what he had in mind, going to go against what defied God and the people of God. Not necessarily did it mean that having fear, you didn't have a trust in God, or doesn't necessarily mean that just because they believed in God, they wouldn't have a fear. Regardless of the situation and of who you are and of who they were, they had a fear, and fear came, but it was dependent on what they did with that fear and how they acted. If the fear came, did you use it to build up your faith to go against that problem?